Hi, my name is Tom Ollerton, and this is the Shiny New Object podcast. This is a podcast about marketing technology, and every week I interview someone who's interesting, exciting, or influential from our industry. And this week is no different. I have Maya Bogle, the co-founder of Talenthouse, who I met at Craig Hepburn's Leaving Drinks. What was it?
That was
4 days ago,
week.
5 days ago or something. And I forced you into doing this podcast. But before we get to know Maya, I need to mention the fact that I'm speaking at a conference in New York on November the 7th called Data Driven Creative. I'm excited about that, to see Drew Silverstein from Amber Music, who I've been a fan of what they do for quite a while. Sorry for the banner ad there, but they're paying for my flight, so it's got to be done. Right, Maya, for anyone listening to this podcast who doesn't know who you are, could you just give them a little overview of what you do?
Thank you. First of all, Tom, thank you very much for having me, and thanks for dragging me away from Craig's Leaving Drinks. My name's Maya Bogle. I'm one of the co-founders at Talenthouse. I'm possibly one of the oldest people I think Tom may have interviewed. And I've been kicking around this industry for over 30 years, and I'm passionate about it, actually. And for the last 9 years, I've been with Talenthouse since founding it, and it's my baby. I'm passionate about it. Essentially, we are a global creative platform for creatives to connect with brands, and we've built the largest now, I think, multi-discipline community of creators across the world. So photographers, filmmakers, fashion designers, illustrators, graphic designers, anyone with a creative flair, and they produce creative work for brands, and the brands tend to use that mainly across digital channels. So it's quite disruptive, quite challenging. It's been a labour of love, passion, all of my money, many heartaches, pain along the way, but that's kind of what founders do.
So tell me a bit about how a brand would actually use Talenthouse. So if I'm I'm head of social or head of digital or something, how would that talk me through the process? So is it a self-serve platform or is it a managed service? How does it work?
It's managed service. We'd like to move, and we're increasingly looking at how we can make it much more of a self-service platform. We recognise that's a much better way to scale our offering. We do not want to become an agency. We do feel the agency model is challenged. So essentially now a brand would come to us with a brief. They'd say we've got a requirement for mainly social assets, for creative social assets to use across digital that we need for multiple markets and multiple channels. We need to amplify. It might be the launch of a new product. It might be to activate an event that they're doing. Or it might just be because we need social media assets, and we need much more of them. We don't just want one piece of work. So brief out our team. Our team put out together a scope of work, and we then put that brief together and we set it to our community. They can either work with a kind of bespoke curator part of our community, so we kind of commission them, or we can do big open source projects where it goes to hundreds, thousands. And we've actually got a community of over 1.4 million creators around the world, so they'll get hundreds of pieces of work coming back. And we also can do influencer marketing, so we can help them amplify that work to ensure that it's seen ultimately by their core target market. So quite challenging stuff, lots of touch points across that, but essentially it's about creative work at scale, at speed, with cultural relevance and at the right price.
And how does that work with the bigger creative ideas? So typically if it was an agency, a brand would go, right, okay, we're going to launch this product. Can you help us come up with a strategic position, a big creative idea? Are you delivering a big creative idea, or are you sort of delivering underneath that the actual assets that are going live? Or do you do both?
Great question. We've found that more and more brands are now turning to us for more concepting and sort of ideation, which traditionally we didn't really think that we were about doing. But it's much more about, let's work with your creative agency, let's look at the big overarching umbrella creative idea. What is the creative strategy that you've come up with? Then let's go to our global community to give you hundreds of pieces of work that riff off that idea that you can use across multiple markets. So that's still our core delivery piece, but we're finding that concepting and ideation, as well as product design, is also creeping into it more and more.
Product design?
Yeah.
What do you mean product design?
Well, brands come to us saying, look, we need some help with coming up with a new concept for a name. We've got this new vodka that we're actually thinking about generating. These are the core values of the vodka, and could you help us come up with a name? Or can you help us with some new packaging design? We're producing a new trainer, or a new sort of water bottle, or a new sort of drinks bottle. Can you help us actually come up with some actual product design and iteration?
And has that worked? Has anyone actually gone with named a pair of trainers? Or
We've done some incredible work with. We're working with Adidas and also Nike. We've worked with GC Shoes, where we came up with some incredible product designs for that too. We've worked with Kimberly-Clark to come up with packaging designs for them. Oh, crikey, so many different brands. Right. It's incredible.
Well, we'll come back to that. So that was good for me to learn a bit more about the business. So let's do some getting to know you questions. You all right with that?
Just be careful what you ask. Well, you might regret it.
Okay, well, here we go. I don't think this question's going to get us in any trouble, but what is the most useful thing that you've bought with your own money that you've used for work?
Oh, my. Okay, from a really banal level, flat pumps, because I can tell you, I like to wear heels and I like to get dressed up to go to work. You try walking up and down escalators, which I do because I'm a founder of a company. I do not abuse our money. So I tell you what, flats are amazing. In terms of practical use, would have to be my mobile phone. I still buy my mobile phone.
Work don't pay for that?
Oh, no.
I thought you were the boss.
No, exactly.
Unbelievably tight.
No, seriously, you can't. I really believe when you're building something, you have to lead by example. And as a founder of a company, I'm an investor in our own company, so every penny we spend is kind of my money too. So we're very careful about it. So no, I do.
So no one at Talenthouse gets their own phone. That's it.
No,
you
absolutely.
deal with it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. What kind of phone you got?
I've got an iPhone. Sorry.
Which one?
It's 7. It's not the latest one,
but
my 2-year contract is up for renewal.
anyone from a car phone warehouse who wants to get in touch, right? Okay, cool. All right. So, what has been your biggest work fuck up to date that has set you up for success?
Wow, that's a really good question. In some ways, not going back to work after I had my children was perhaps one of my biggest work failures. And it was a really difficult decision to make because I really have got a very strong work ethic in me. I think it comes from my father, who's from Mauritius, and he used to walk 7 miles barefoot every morning to and from school to get the education he required to then apply for Edinburgh University to read medicine. That's where he met my mum, some half Scottish, half Mauritian. And I've got a very strong work ethic in me. And I think I really wanted to work a lot, but when I got married, my partner wasn't so keen on me working. And so I didn't go back to work immediately. And I think in many ways that sort of suppressed my career. But in many ways it also developed this urge in me to want to do and to prove to the world that I had this work in me, and I still had another sort of innings.
And how long was that, having kids and not working?
Probably, I always tried to do something. So initially I threw myself into a lot of the kiddie type stuff like, the NCT, the National Childbirth Trust, and the Parent Teachers Association. I did some really, really dodgy network marketing companies too, those kind of, things. I always wanted to do something.
Yeah.
But probably about 8 to 9 years without working properly.
And so what do you think that cost you?
I think it possibly cost me I suppose the time to get back into the market, although I was quite surprised. And I sort of re-entered it in sort of 2006. I was amazed that people still remembered me. It was like, wow, this is amazing. So that was very exciting.
And what did you come back and do?
Celebrity product placement, putting products into the hands of celebrities, mainly people like Dizzy Rascal, Florence Machine, Playing the Faith. Take that, I dare to say, in even One Direction. So did a lot of kind of work with those sort of music acts in the main. Prior to that, I was a headhunter for a while, a media headhunter. But another big work failure was British Satellite Broadcasting. So back in the day when I was still actually properly working, I helped launch BSB into the UK with the Squarials. Now, you're probably too young to remember.
No, of course.
Do you remember those?
Yeah, right, yeah.
So,
the Squarials.
So whilst they were in many ways deemed a failure, because BSB, our CEO, was a lovely man who very sadly passed away last year, called Anthony Simmons Gooding. His background was Whitbread, super gentleman. He just was not built to take on Murdoch, who just came in and literally whipped the carpet out from underneath our feet. So I think I learned a lot from that too, which is the concept of satellite television and paying for TV. Back in that day, no one believed you pay for TV. My Sky bill last month was over 100 quid. I don't know whether you use Sky or not, but pretty damn scary. So believe in the market opportunity, go for it, have relentless belief.
And what about a Talenthouse? What's gone wrong in those 8 years that is, you think, well, I'm not doing that again? Because it's my belief that the expensive lessons are the ones that you learn. Like if you make a mistake that doesn't cost you anything, like you'll keep on making that mistake over and over again. But if it costs you money or time or emotional heartache, I ain't doing that again. So what's happened in these last few years where you've gone, right, I'm not doing that again, and it's made you stronger?
So much. We've made every mistake you can possibly imagine. But in making those mistakes, I genuinely think that has made us a much stronger, much better company. We put a lot of our resources into some reselling partners who we believe were going to help us crack this market. We initially targeted agencies over brands direct, and we put a lot of effort into both media agencies who would say to us, well, actually, sounds great, but where do we put you on a media plan? Then the creative agencies who would say, ooh, aren't you dirty, cheap, nasty, disgusting crowdsourcing? And why would we want to go anywhere near you? And we said, no, this is about not turning to the crowd for your creative. It's about creatives. Technology's put the ability in the hands of so many people to create. So we can challenge that market. But so targeting the wrong people, I think.
When did you realise you were targeting the wrong people? How long did that take before you realised you wasted that time?
After we did 7 more raises of money, nearly went down a couple of times, and it was like, what are we doing? But, it was, even very early on, I had I shan't mention which company it was, but I had the CEO of one of the big 2 or 3 agency network groups say, this is amazing. We're going to invite you down to our board meeting to present to the whole board around what Talenthouse can do to revolutionise our business model. So there was lots of buy-in at a very senior level, but we found that either the middle layer of management or the more junior layer of management didn't have the cut-through. They weren't actually empowered to take risks. They weren't empowered to make that digital transformation or change. So I've learned a lot about how agency models can work and change and alter. And I was with P&G last week. They asked me to do an inspirational talk to about 30 of their brand managers. And a lot of it was trying to say, how can you take the mentality of a co-founder and a startup mentality and transfer that into a huge corporate brand with multiple brands underneath like P&G?
How do you do that?
It's very, very difficult. You have to have, I believe, complete honest buy-in from the top level. You have to be able to create an environment for failure. You cannot expect a team to take risks and to try new things unless you also allow them to fail. I think creating a whole mentality around testing and curiosity and working with new partners.
How do you do that? I agree with you, but I've told that so many times. But so my thing with innovation is, in order for innovation to work, you have to have 9 things go wrong for every one thing that you've got right. You can't have a hit rate of more than that, in my experience. So there's very few business models that support that. If you're Google with a money printing machine, you can go, you know what, we'll create a whole community of people that can make as many mistakes as they like. I'm sure that's not how they see it. But if you're an agency and you're going to protect your margin, or if you're a P&G, how can you justify to the board that a 1 out of 10 strike rate is justifiable?
I think 1 out of 10 would be quite tricky, but I think you have to have a percentage allowance for failure. And actually, P&G, one of the things that was being fed back was, in many ways, they don't see their biggest threats in lots of ways as like the big companies back in the day, like the J&Js or the Unilevers or whatever, the big sort of FMCG brands. In many ways, it's these really cool, small, agile brands which are creeping through, which are looking about how they can engage people authentically across digital and social, which are cutting through. Now, clearly, their market share is tiny. It's infinitesimally small, but they're cutting through in a way which is really exciting. And I think that building a culture for learning, for curiosity, for failure, for testing, for working with outsourced partners. If I was running an agency today, I would honestly, a lot of people won't want to hear this, but I would seriously fire a whole heap of people. I would literally want to have the smartest and best people around me. I'd create And, that's just why BCG and McKinsey's are starting to work with agencies more and more. They're trying to go in and say to these guys, look, guys, stop thinking of just about the output. Think about the strategy. Go upstream. Think about how you as an agency can really help shape the way this brand is going, what direction they need to take. But outsource all of that other stuff. Why would an agency want to produce for a brand 1,000 pieces of creative per month? I mean, they're just not scoped or agile enough or resourced to do that. I mean, they'd have to put their headcount up and their overheads up and their ability to increase their output by a hairbreadth. So outsource that, but keep the strategy in-house, keep that planning in-house. Go back to those really incredible, roots and pillars of what a great advertising agency should be doing for a brand. And it's not just about the output.
So in the last 5 years, which new belief or behaviour has improved your work life?
Work with smarter people and don't try to do everything yourself. And
so you've been guilty of that?
Yeah, I think I've been
8
very
years
guilty.
in, you've just worked that out.
We said in the last 5 years.
Right,
So
don't be like that.
Let's not be pernickety about what's 3 years between mates.
Yeah.
But actually, I think that one of the greatest things that I learnt is from one of my greatest mentors, who's my ex-husband, who works in the advertising industry. He's an incredible person, runs a very big advertising agency. And he said to me many years ago that from a very early age, we're often encouraged to work on the things that we're bad at. So think about your school days. Teacher says to little Johnny, hey Johnny, or Tommy in this case, Tommy, you're showing great ability in art and drama, but your maths and English need a bit of work. So can you just work a bit harder at, maths and English? So from a very early age, we're taught to work on the stuff we're not very good at. So what I've been trying to do is to focus on, Maya, what are you really good at? Just focus on that.
What are you really good at?
I'd like to think I'm good at being the front person. I'd like to think I'm good at inspiring people, getting people fired up and excited and getting on a stage and talking about disrupting industries and exciting new things and doing good and empowering creatives to help shape your brand communications. Those kind of things get me really fired up. But operationally, I suck. Don't ask my team about me. Seriously, they say, gosh, Maya, follow up. Really bad, really good at stage 1, possibly bring her back in if there are 5 stages at stage 5 to help with the close. Do not get her to do stages 2, 3 and 4 because it won't happen.
Right, okay, I like that a lot.
So work on your peaks and ignore your troughs, sack them off and get somebody else better to do them.
So I like that. So I'm in the early stages of a business and I can't do that. I can't.
It's really tough.
How did you do that when you were starting off Talent?
Work with smarter people. So you're right, we didn't. Initially, we would find too many of us would have the same skill set and we'd chase down a tunnel or an avenue and we just weren't getting the results. We then tried to grow too quickly. We targeted the wrong people. So I think find great mentors. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Get great advice from people.
How do you find great mentors?
Look to people who have got a proven track record of success. I think, generally speaking, not always, but often history is a great predictor of future. Not always, as we know. We've seen this industry change and evolve beyond our possible imagination. So I think looking to people who are great mentors, have got a proven success track record, ask for help. Don't be afraid to say, we screwed up.
So, you've been running the business, the crowdsourced creative at scale for like 8 years. So who was your mentor? You mentioned your ex-husbands, but in the technology space, who were you chatting to 8 years ago that helped you shape the business?
That's very interesting. My co-founder is much more of a technologist than myself. He did very successful.
Who's that?
He's called Roman Scharf. He's Austrian. And he's based now in Austria, but he lived for a long time in America. And initially we were headquartered in Mountain View, then Palo Alto. So we were literally a Silicon Valley company. So it's very exciting. I was gosh, I've got... We didn't have a London address. I had Mountain View. And I'd potter over there to these crazy little towns. And we met some incredible people over there. And we felt initially that we just wanted to be this technology company. We just wanted to push technology. And we would still view ourselves very much as a technology company. But I do believe, in many ways, that technology is not defensible. there is always going to be a smarter bit of kit around the corner. There's always going to be somebody who can develop something faster, something better insights, better data, better ways of validating attribution or transparency or targeting or retargeting or analytics and all of that kind of stuff, which I think our industry has got completely bogged down with. And in many views, I think the elephant in the room is creativity. We've all forgotten about what is great advertising about. It's about the work. You just need a hell of a lot more of it now.
So you start off a Mountain View and you're a tech-first business, and then you realise that tech isn't defensible. So what happened to get you to that point?
I think what happened was initially we started off very much as, dare I say it, a sort of contest platform. We are much more of what I would call a traditional crowdsourcing platform when we first launched. So we didn't do anything to really garner the creative community, to listen to them, to nurture them, to support them, to think about what do they really need. We never viewed them as just a resource, but we thought, let's launch a brief from Adidas or from another brand to come and work with our community, and the community might produce one piece of work, but then if they weren't successful in being selected by Adidas, they'd, excuse my language, bugger off. They've gone. So we had this huge churn of creatives. So we sort of thought about it and thought, actually, our greatest asset is not technology to actually deliver the creative at speed. It's much more around the creative themselves. I see creators as influencers, as tastemakers, as early adopters. If you think about popular culture, they help shape it. They do everything in terms of deciding that Shoreditch, where we're now sitting, kind of, is, really cool. Whereas I live in West London, which really isn't cool. And, that was because the artists, the creatives, the artisans started populating this part of the world. And that's happened in, whether it's Dunbar in New York or it's Venice Beach in LA, the creatives set that cultural tone. They dictate fashion and music and what you should look like and what is cool and what isn't cool. So we have this incredible resource which we were sort of initially not recognising the value in. So we relaunched the platform and focused on building a vibrant community, and that changed everything.
And so how does that work? How did you build a community? So you were a competition platform, right? I get that. So then, outside of offering people gigs, how are you building that community?
I love the fact you use gigs, because the gig economy is something which has really changed and revolutionised so many businesses. Think about Uber, think about Airbnb, think about so many other ways where you just go in for a gig and then you take off. What we did is we realised that creatives want, apart from money, which creators want to make, they want recognition, they want exposure. They want access, they want to be inspired by other creatives, they want their work to be seen, loved and shared and supported. And most creatives have a desire to exhibit, they want their work to be seen. So we went about creating this platform where creators could join us always for free. They could just build a portfolio, they could have their work seen, loved and shared. They never had to work with a brand if they didn't want to. They didn't have, that was not part of a remit for joining Talenthouse, but it was an opportunity if you wanted to access it. So we focused on doing that.
And so that's all very lovely now that it's worked out. That's like a massive build, technically. So what was the insight that got you to the point to think, right, well, let's just create a community where people can share their art?
Talking to creators, listening to them. I think one of the big pieces of advice I'd give to anyone in life, whether it's an entrepreneur or anyone working or just a human being, is ask questions. Listen and learn and be prepared to evolve and to reiterate. I mean, our core beliefs have not altered. Our core beliefs were that creators make the best content, and that brands need more creative work, more great content than ever before. And those two core beliefs have not shifted and changed at all. But how we've gone about marrying those two together has altered quite dramatically over the last 9 years. And I think that creators are incredible. I'm humbled by our community. I'm not a creative myself at all. I'm a sales girl. Nasty sales girl. Get out there.
You're a nasty sales girl. That's not true. That's harsh. So, in the last 5 years, what have you become better at saying no to?
Probably meetings. I think a lot of people, initially when they're starting, with a new company and a new concept and a new idea, will take a meeting with everyone. I think I've got better at managing my time and better at recognising what I should say no to.
How do you decide what to say no to?
It's very difficult. I think I would now, with a lot of things I don't know about, I would do a phone call first. And I think there is so much that you can actually ascertain over a phone call rather than a meeting. Because a meeting does take out a huge chunk of your day, whatever way you think about it. Most people expect a meeting to last for an hour, but a lot of people...
Why is that?
I don't know.
Why is it? I always put in meetings for half an hour.
Yeah. It's a really good question,
If
Tom.
you can't get through it, especially say I'd never heard of Talenthouse and you were going to go meet somebody, if you can't pitch it in 15 minutes, it's no good.
Yeah.
But if we're going to work out, I don't know, what our global strategy for working together is going to be, we'll give that an hour.
I love the fact you said that. You're so right. I mean, literally, I've got people who said to me for the first 3 or 4 years of meeting me, they had no idea what Talenthouse did. They could not understand what we did because it was so complicated. We're working with celebrities and creatives and brands. It's like, I don't get what you do. And now I can say, do you know what? We deliver creative work for brands at scale and influencer marketing to make sure the right people see it. They go, oh, okay, that's cool, groovy, get that.
Got your elevator pitch sorted.
Groovy, but not for 9 years.
yeah, right. Yeah, because I had a call with a startup a little while back, and I just said, look, can we get this done in 15 minutes? Because if I'm really excited about it, then we can work out what the next thing is, and if that's another 15 minutes or a call or whatever, we'll do. And they were like, yeah, but this presentation's 25 minutes. I'm like, I don't care. Like you have to be able to sell it instantly, otherwise it's not that good.
You're
anyway, I'm
right.
being grumpy. This isn't about me. Right, okay. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, how do you get back on track?
I would think that I stop what I'm doing. I think the most important thing is to actually stop what you're doing, because the worst thing is to keep on staring at something. So I was writing a speech for this P&G meeting last week, and I did find myself distracted, and I was pottering around, and I'm going off to play with the dogs and doing whatever else. So if I actually get to the point of thinking, Maya, you are losing your thread, I will stop what I'm doing. And at that point, I would properly either definitely leave the room, go and play with my dogs properly, rather than encourage them to come into the room that I'm trying to write a presentation in.
Right.
Go for a walk, call my mum, call Nigel, my ex, have a chat with him. He's a great sort of sounding board for getting me back on track. He's known me for over 30 years, so he's
So you've been selling this business for 8 years.
9 now, yeah.
Right, fine.
It's scary.
You need to stop getting lost in the detail about these years. This P&G thing was a big deal. You mentioned it a few times. So how do you go about writing a presentation?
I think about what they want to hear, first of all, rather than what I'd like to say.
Do you take a brief from them, or do they just go, can you talk for it?
No, I took a brief.
Do you send them questions for the brief? Or?
They gave me a very detailed brief.
Okay.
It was quite a detailed brief saying, we want you to talk to us around entrepreneurialism and inspiration and founding a company, and how you can apply some of those skills to a company like P&G, which they felt quite a challenge. So as we talked about earlier, it was that real, okay, what are those core skills you need, which I think are about, belief and passion and hard work, and literally a relentless belief in what you're doing, but being curious and asking questions and finding mentors, talking to people, test marking, just testing your whole affirmations and your assumptions as you're going along. So
what do you mean testing your affirmations?
We're just talking to brands, and so we went out when we launched this company with the belief that we could change the way that brands source creative work, that we could speed up the process, we could deliver better work, we could be with faster turnarounds and at a better, more cost-efficient price. So those are quite big goals to take on the advertising industry. So
what was the moment of moment of ideation? When did you come up with the idea? How did that happen? And you founded it with
Roman, and there was
Roman.
Initially another founder too, and he's since parted company with us. He just kind of pursued his own direction. But he initially came up with this whole concept along with Roman and I, which we supported. We all met at the same sort of juncture. So I had my brand hat on, Roman had his tech hat on, and Amos had his creative hat on. So we had a creative, a technologist, and a kind of advertising girl. And so those are the three areas that we felt we were combining.
And were you trying to solve a problem, or were you just drinking martinis and
trying to solve a problem? It was interesting enough. It was really with, dare I say, the explosion and proliferation of digital channels. I hate saying that, but this was back in, if you think about it, the mid-2000s, and I don't think Twitter launched until 2005 or 7 or something. It's around then. I think Facebook was 2003 or 4. So our whole idea came around about 2006, 2007. We didn't launch until 2009. And it was based around the fact that, hey, how do brands cut through? And how do brands actually make meaningful conversations and dialogue across social? How do they create scalable, engaging, personalised creative work? And all of this has evolved.
Were you
over
actually
those years.
genuinely talking to these people about that?
No.
So I want to know.
I'm jumping to because now this is like informed information, so it's quite difficult.
But I want to know what were the grisly facts.
The grisly fact was then based around creatives, and this is honestly the truth. Creatives want to exhibit. Creators make great content. They have a need to have their work seen, loved, shared, and rewarded. They want to make money from work. And brands need more creative work than ever before because of the explosion of digital. So those were the two overarching core beliefs that we founded Talenthouse with. And those have not altered over 9 years. How we get to that marrying up of those two, the blending of technology, creative, and brands has evolved.
So we're at the halfway stage.
Oh, are we?
We are indeed.
We haven't even talked about all my personal questions. We're going to talk about the industry now. We've been talking about the industry for 20 minutes. You got off route, Tom. I distracted you.
It's my podcast too. So the shiny new object is creative at scale, which we have indeed talked about. But when we were prepping for this chat, you said you've been experimenting with artificial intelligence. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yes. So our view is that ultimately brands need more creative than ever before. This was validated to me, and not everyone loves Facebook, but we can't deny them as a very informed partner in the industry. And Elizabeth Valou, who's this really cool, funky lady I met a couple of times, I really liked her a lot. She's a global creative strategist at Facebook, but based here in London, but she's American. And she said to me when I met her about a couple of months ago, Maya, the average Facebook user scrolls the height of the Empire State Building every day. So cutting through as a brand is incredibly difficult. And based on, if you think about Facebook and Google, I think something like 70% of their revenue comes from SMEs. It doesn't come from your Unilevers and Diageos and Pernod Ricard's or Heineken's or Procter & Gamble's, etc. It's from these small businesses. They can't go out and produce creative work for these brands at scale. But the stuff that's coming through is not really cutting through. So we're now experimenting with trying to help brands identify not just the volume of work, not just a body of work to look at, but what is the best work within that body of work to use across their digital and social channels. So rather than just running, say, 2 or 3 pieces and then doing a bit of A/B testing to say, hey, this piece performed a bit better than that, so let's pull the other piece, etc., and put all our media spend behind that. What we're doing now is working with some partners, and this is still very new and very exploratory, where we can actually look at a body of creative work that they've used before across their social channels. We can look at the metadata of how that creative work has performed. This tends to be more visual, static work at the moment, probably wouldn't work so well with moving imagery. And then, based on the metadata, we can then look at, say, the 500 or 600 pieces of work one of our initiatives would probably deliver. When you work with Talenthouse, you can either pick for a handful of pieces with curating artists or go for open source and get 500 or 600 pieces. So which bits do you use? Should it just be subjective? Should it just be down to what the Talenthouse team think and the brand director thinks, hey, well, we like that, let's use it. What we now want to do is to apply AI. We can look at how their metadata performed to their previous content. So based on that, the metadata and the AI are now saying that of this body of work that you've approved, so of the approved work, we'd say this is going to perform the best, that's going to perform the worst, and this we think will probably perform in a mediocre way. So we're now looking for partners to help us test this and to run this. We've identified the partner who can help us do this. So it's very new and very exciting.
So just like that, it's super interesting. So a brand would come to you and say, right, we're launching these trainers. and you put it out to your either the kind of elite creators or the larger community, and anyway you get a pile of work back, and instead of them having to go through 400, 500 videos, you use an AI to go through that content to work out which one is most likely to perform, and then they buy that bit of content.
Yeah, so base, and then what we'd ideally like to do is to run, say, three or four pieces. So the AI would say, this group are going to perform in the best, the worst, the middle. Let's run 6 pieces and just see. Because if the AI proves that to be correct, that's going to be one of the most powerful tools for a brand to actually be able to say, this data is correctively predicting what work we should use. So the work that comes through is amazing, Tom. I mean, I'm totally staggered by how that actually, it's just amazing, it's mind-boggling. The other areas of technology that we're exploring too are based with the influencer marketing company that we've recently acquired. And we spent
Can you say who that is?
Yes, they're called The Circle, and they're headquartered in Amsterdam, but with offices in America and in Asia. And we spent quite a bit of time looking at different influencer marketing companies, and we liked them the most because we loved the founders, and we loved.
And so, just for people who aren't into influencer marketing as much as others, like what did they do? Were they management? Did they manage talent, or were they a technology platform? What
both.
did they do?
So what's really brilliant, we love their technology. So they've aggregated around about 10,000 influencers across the world who have got influence within specific market categories, whether it's across fashion or sport or FMCG or health or nutrition, whatever it might be. And we believe the ability to take great creative work from our community, give it to an influencer who's been properly checked out, so they haven't got fraudulent fans or just fake followers, etc. And then take that work. How
are you protecting against that? How are you making sure that they don't have fraudulent fans?
The Circle are very rigorous with their testing and with their questioning, with their interviewing and with their data and their technology. So the Circle guys are amazing. I really love them to bits. And this is a very, very recent acquisition. So
Did you buy them with your money?
Yes, all mine. I went to my piggy bank and I smashed it open. Said, Maya, there's nothing left.
Christ, that must have been that must be absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. But they've got, I don't want to talk about this too much because it's very new.
Okay.
But they have got a really new bit of kit, which is very exciting, which is brands, I believe, a lot of them are really obsessing about attribution. What actually is triggering that purchase? So if you work back from the point of purchase, what builds that brand affinity, that brand desirability, that brand love, that brand engagement, that actual path to purchase? And somewhere along that continuum, we want to believe that great creative work can make an impact in that decision. But then you have to make sure that work is seen by ultimately your target audience. So we felt the inclusion of an influencer marketing company kind of closed the loop. Because if you just stop with the creative, we were then kind of blind as to where that creative was being used. We'd no idea how our brands were using it.
Tell me about how they're tracking attribution without going into
they're doing, it's very new, and I believe they're the only influencer marketing company doing it at the moment. They've found a way on Instagram to allow the influencer to take a piece of content that we would use, and embedded into that content there would be an offer. So it's basically a card that you can swipe up on Instagram, and it downloads into your wallet on your iOS or Android. So you've now got in your Passbook wallet on your phone a specific offer for a brand. It might be a discount for a purchase, it could be a ticket to something, it could just be, but people don't clear out their wallets, they don't clear them out. So that then is then sitting inside that user's wallet that the brand can then serve them more offers, more promotions.
So it acts like a cookie, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
But we can change it, we can like reskin it. So you might be sitting there, oh gosh, here's another offer from whoever it might be. It could be Marks and Spencer's, it could be from Virgin Airlines.
So Adidas can put an offer on an influencer's Instagram post, and that drops into their wallet. Yeah. And you can change the brand within that wallet.
No, not change the brand, change the offer. They change the offer for the same brand.
I was going to say, isn't there some kind of GDPR?
No, that wouldn't be good.
You just bought.
I've got the police waiting outside.
Snipers on the roof.
So it's that's quite exciting.
And that's not an attribution model. That's just literally tracking a sale directly from that person's post.
So they'd be able to work it back because we can track it. So the brand would be able to say that actually there's something built into this wallet which allows them to to feedback that it was that card which triggered that purchase, which was downloaded by that consumer from that influencer's post, from the piece of content that came from Talenthouse. So you're actually creating a lovely continuum where a brand can actually start to say, rather than putting work out into the ether, first of all, is it the right work? Secondly, who's going to see that work? Who's going to distribute that work? And once it's distributed, how do you know if that work has actually impacted on a sale? So we're trying to, with technology, but the heart of what we do is about creativity, but with creativity and technology, we're hoping we can help our brand partners to understand more about what's working and what's not working.
And so how does it work if it's, I mean, that's got a kind of direct response feel to it, that it's like, hey, here's the offer, swipe up, ka-ching.
Yeah.
What happens when it's in more of a kind of brand piece? How does the technology cope with that?
That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that yet, because this is very new. We only just acquired them, like literally the paper went through last week.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank
Brilliant.
you.
So are they moving over here, or are they staying
They're
in
going to stay
Amsterdam?
where they are, and we've also acquired a couple of other creative communities too. So we've been busy, and it's been very challenging, very tricky, but we've also acquired a company called Ello.co, which is ELLO.co, a beautiful community of creatives. They're headquartered in Bogle, Colorado, and Production Media Networks, we're working with them, and we've got another filmmaking community we're just about to finalise our completion on too. So,
And when you, sorry, this is a long way away from my world, so apologies for asking you really basic questions. So when you acquire a community of creators, what does that mean? So under LO.co's website, there's like a community of people who are sharing a certain form of creativity, and then you're approximating that URL into yours, or does that...
It's a really interesting question, and there's lots of stuff that we're doing right now to work out what's the best way of moving forward, because in many ways our goal and our ambition would be to have the prettiest shop window, which is where all the creatives are, then sort of like the engine behind, which is where the brands come to it, and then the distribution of that work, which is like another engine. So it's almost like a B to C, which is a shop. So it's business to artist or business to creator, and also business to consumer. So that's the shop window, which we want to keep beautiful, authentic, culturally relevant, lots of storytelling content, lots of shared editorials. It becomes almost like a publishing platform with a huge number of eyeballs going through it. Then we've got the part of our business which is much more of the B2B creative invite, which is what we call our campaigns, or artist invites, or black book commissioning. That's really the bit that the brands and the agencies will come to. Then there's the influencer marketing piece, which again the brands and the agencies would come to. But we do believe that we can migrate a huge number of the creators who have influence, because not all creators have influence, and not all influencers are creative, but there are some creatives who have influence. So you've got three along that continuum. So the creators we've got who've got influence and want to monetize that influence as well as their creativity, will migrate them into the Circle app. And there'll be other creators who say, do you know what? I don't want to go anywhere near that. Not interested. I don't want to ever share this work. I just want to create it. And that's completely cool too. Then there'll be some influencers who've got genuine influence and they can shape how people feel about things, but they don't actually create that original work.
And so what, I'm curious to know, what are the trends that you've seen change? I mean, obviously you've seen influencers kind of rise and you've gone, right, we need to get a part of that, and it sounds like you've made a really sensible acquisition. But in terms of like raw creativity, what have you seen in 2018 that surprised you?
That's a really good question. I think the main thing we've seen, perhaps not just over this year, but since launch, is that technology is clearly a huge friend of creatives. And it gives more people the ability to create. You can go out and shoot a film with a handheld camera now, and in many ways it's also threatened creators' livelihood, because as a consumer we can stream all the music in the world for like $10 a month. I know you said don't use $10, well, $9.99 a month, pounds. And where are you from? Are you American? No, I'm not. And so there's this real, and that's creating masses of issues. If you're a young musician, it doesn't matter whether you're in Venice Beach or in Shanghai or wherever else you are, how can you sell your music? And we could probably, right now, you and I could go onto the web, find an Andy Warhol piece of artwork, find somebody who could rip it off, blow it up into a huge, 10 by 10 canvas. I could hang it on my sitting room wall, and the Andy Warhol estate would make no money. So technology, I think, is a friend clearly always, but it's also created real issues for creatives to make money. So I think one of the big shifts that we've seen since we launched is that now you don't have so much of this left brain, right brain, creatives hating brands. For many years, brands were almost like this pariahs of creativity. They were ugly, disgusting things. You wouldn't want to go and create for an advertising agency or create for a brand. You had to go off and do your own kind of thing and die undiscovered or cut off your ear or something. I mean, those times have changed. And I really believe now that creators see brands as facilitators, as enablers, as potentially the new modern-day digital Medicis, as patrons of the art. And I think that I really believe that if brands support creatives in giving them opportunities to help them shape their communications, opportunities to have their work seen, recognised and rewarded, I do believe in return creatives can help build brands. And that's my sort of, I really believe that brands can empower and engage and support and nurture, but they have to do it properly and authentically.
And when brands do that wrong, what happens? What are the sure signs of, I don't know, Bogle will show up and say, we want to cool content? Tell me what are the kind of classic things to avoid?
I think that some of the mistakes brands have made is in trying to crowbar creative into a brand, too corporate, sort of, this is how it has to be, you have to use this, you have to do that. So, for instance, someone like Next, the fashion brand, many years ago, I don't know if you recall, but they did, it backfired on them terribly. They were trying to do let's look at the new face of Next. And they did it across their own social channels. The whole thing backfired.
And they did this with you?
No. And this is I think it was even possibly pre-Talenthouse, or it might have been the very early days of Talenthouse. And they tried to use their own social channels. They had no relationship with the creatives. They had no authenticity with them. And this whole thing backfired, and this one guy was selected who was seemed as universally not attractive, but everyone voted for him, and it became like this public, let's just show Next up, because they've now committed to saying this guy who gets the most votes is going to have to be the new face of Next. We've worked with other more corporate brands. I think we did a campaign with HP a while back, where they try to make it...
HP Source?
No, HP Hewlett-Packard. House of the Plant would have been amazing.
That was your mistake.
And they just made it way too corporate and way too rigid.
The brief was wrong?
The brief was wrong. And
do you remember what it was?
I really can't recall, but it became less and less authentic. And one of the biggest mistakes we made was with Coca-Cola. This was in the World Cup, I think 8 years ago, not 4 years ago, where it started off as a credible brief with a creative having the opportunity to go and collaborate with a really well-known music producer or photographer or something in a studio somewhere. And then it became a kind of UGC, a horrible fan-based competition. And it came down to send in your moment of happiness. Now, you can't give that brief to a creative. Send in your moment of happiness. No creative on the planet is going to respond to that in an authentic, credible way. And the work that came through was awful. It was just embarrassing.
Give me an example of some of the work.
Oh my God! Well, his Uncle Fred sitting on his sofa with his fish and chips and his it was just gross. It was just horrible. And then we had other ones with what's the other brand? I can't remember now, where we had just people jumping up and down the beds like girls going, woohoo! Just like really horrible, nasty UGC content. The kind of stuff which, let's be clear, Tom, there is no shortage of content. There's billions of bits uploaded every day. But this was UGC content. It was not curated, cool creator content. So we've learnt more than anything that the brief has got to be right. The incentives have to be right to the community. You have to respect them. You have to engage them. You have to embrace them. You have to listen to them.
So how do you deal with the authenticity problem? Because I've heard that word in this industry for probably about the last 6 years.
Yeah.
It could be authentic, man.
Yeah.
Which is, okay, cool. So how do you ensure that happens? It doesn't just become something you say. I
think it's about, again, the brief, and it's about connecting with the right people to do it. So one of the things, when we spoke to one of the big, it was either Pernod Ricard or Diageo, and they talked about one of their brands where they were trying to celebrate diversity, and they featured the kiss. And it was a guy kissing a guy, girl kissing a girl, etc. And afterwards they said it's really tricky because we can't run that work in multiple African countries, or in Russia, and quite a few of our other territories that we can currently retail in. And that cultural resonance, that cultural pertinence and diversity issue is something which I think more and more brands are actually struggling with, how to produce authentic content which isn't seen as being, just condescending or offbeat. And so one of the things we've been doing is building what we're calling Talenthouse tribes. So we've got over 1.4 million creatives globally, and within that community we know that there will be both members and empathisers of the LGBTQ community. And who better than empathisers and members of that community who are creators to actually produce content for a brand who wants to target that community or wants to address their diversity issues. So that's something which we're very much focusing our attention on too, the authenticity of producing creative work for people who are going to actually look at that work. So work for millennials, I hate using millennials, but those young folk, I know, I'm so sorry.
Can I take that back? In the back of notes.
So can I take that? But work made by that target group for that target group. Yeah. And do you really want 4 white men sitting in an agency? I'm not saying they wear suits anymore, and they're not like Mad Men days. Those days have gone. But why on earth would a brand want to go to the same group of people within an agency to try to produce work for multiple markets and multiple channels? I mean, even if you're targeting men, surely that type of work you would use for Dazed versus The Sun versus Lad's Bible might all be different. And so does one piece of work cut it? But can one agency group or creative team produce that? I would say I'd question whether they can.
So it's interesting, we haven't really talked about this, but the tension between you and an agency. So I mean, your brand roster the client roster, is like just ridiculous, right? It's probably like, well, who haven't we got is probably the case you are. So why are these brands coming to you and not going to an agency?
I think they're coming to us for 4 main reasons. One is the volume of work they now require. They're frustrated by the speed of turnaround from their agencies. They're frustrated by the cost of that, given that time is often the unit of measurement for an agency. And they want the cultural relevance of that work, which I think they're recognising is quite difficult to get from one-offers. And if Unilever has got a brand that distributes in 170-plus markets, it's pretty unlikely that they're going to be able to find an agency which has got creatives in 170 markets to produce work that may resonate with that particular market. And I do believe the only way you can do that effectively, cost-effectively, with real cultural relevance is if you've got an open source creative community. But I'm hoping that more and more agencies will now embrace us. We want to work with agencies. I really want anyone...
Why do you want to work with agencies?
Because I believe they could scale our proposition more. I think we almost need to have that reselling function. I don't want us to have to become this huge, heavy, lifting part of the process, which means we would need more and more people and increase our headcount and become more like an agency. I would love the procurement directors of brands to turn around and say to us, you can give us what I need for 170 markets globally. And procurement director of Procter & Gamble or Diageo or Pernod Ricard or Microsoft or Unilever, any of these big mother hoogie hargy brands. And, you can help us. We're going to have global strategy but local execution. And I think global strategy and local execution is a really big challenge for a lot of brands. And I would say centralise a lot of your global strategy, keep smarter people working in your team, but outsource the stuff which you're not scoped or scaled to do. And creativity at scale with cultural relevance, with faster turnarounds for multiple markets is just not suited to the agency model. So why would you stick with doing that? It just seems nutty.
Yeah, but I get why a global procurement director would want to talk to you, but you said that you want to work with agencies, so there's a tension there.
I know.
Well, let's get to the bottom of it. Which is it?
Well, I would like that. There's no tension for us. If an agency called us up now, we over the years we've been slightly abused. It'd be like, hi, here's an RFP or here's a whatever they're called, and I'm like, they should be RIPs, they should be rest in pieces as far as I'm concerned. And it's sort of, crikey, why do I want my team to go and spend hours and hours and hours putting together a proposal from an agency when you never know how far away they are from the decision-making ability to say yes?
Do you still do RFPs?
I hope not. I
When was
really
the last
hope
time
not.
you did one?
Never. I've never done one in my life, and I don't want to start now.
Yeah, but so if an agency says do an RFP,
I'd say to someone in my team. I'd say to my team.
No, I mean as a business.
As a business, yeah. No, me personally, and somebody in my business.
I know clearly you're above all that.
No, not at all. I just wouldn't know how. I wouldn't know how to respond.
Sorry to suggest for a minute that you get involved in the work.
Tom, anyway. I wouldn't know how to start. But I think that we would say, look, we need to know whether we can have some direct contact with the client. I think you and I talked about earlier about some of your challenges too, and how you don't want to waste your time. And I know that if we get in front of a brand, their eyes light up. They go, wow, that volume of work, with that turnaround, with those cost efficiencies and that cultural relevance, tick, 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 and they want to work with us. And so I would love more agencies to view us as somebody who can be a partner. We're willing to give them their own agency dashboard, their own back-end login. They can say it's all their work. We don't mind. We just want to serve our community by giving them more opportunities, and I want to keep my team small, agile, tight, lovely, committed, happy, passionate and focused.
What a nice way to finish it. So I'm just going to wrap up here. So you've been doing Talenthouse for some number of years, 8, 9, who's counting? And you instantly started talking about how you're moving away from just sourcing great work into the concepting and ideation phase. And I think that's amazing that you're moving from advertising to product design and naming, like, was it FMCG products. The things that you've spent your money on are an iPhone 7 and some flats. So that's interesting.
Pumps. Not accommodation.
And you said we've made more mistakes than you can possibly imagine, and it was sort of good to get a bit of an insight into that type of stuff. And you said that you talk about and encourage brands to have a percentage allowance for failure. And it was interesting to get your view on how someone like Procter & Gamble are scared of smaller, agile businesses that are getting the cut through. And you said that there's lots of interesting quotes, but I like this one best. If I ran an agency today, I'd fire so many people. Which I like. Other advice was find great mentors. Don't be afraid of asking advice. And a really interesting view, actually, is kind of close to home, is that the tech isn't defensible. There's always some smarter Googler, probably, or a Facebook person who's going to do it better than you. That you think that advertising is still just all about the work, you just need a lot more of it, which is the problem you're solving, and that you founded the business on the idea that creatives want exposure and access, and brands want more content, and you're kind of solving both those problems. We both think the meeting shouldn't be an hour. Let's put that down. And your shiny object is really creative at scale, which we talked about for the whole interview. That's totally fine. Interview? Is this an interview? It's a conversation.
It's been lovely.
Anyway, you've done very well. Congratulations. You talk about the circle. It's a really interesting acquisition. It's great to know how aggressive you are with M&A. I have no idea about that. It's going to be interesting to see how the acquisition of Ello and so on really works well. And you see yourselves as a business to artist business as well as a B2B and a B2C product, which is fascinating. And that you said that now creatives see brands as modern day Medicis, which is true and exciting, and how you and your platform allow authenticity to happen with different audiences. So if you want a very specific audience, whether it be it's
LGBTQ.
Thank you.
It's a mouthful.
Debated that, of course. But if you're targeting that specific audience, they can never say right. Then you need to have the right people, making the right content for that audience in the right market, which is an excellent answer to that. And you want to work with agencies, and this is brilliant. And I'll leave it on this: is that RFP should be RIP. Remember that. So if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
I'm very open. I'm not going to give my mobile number out but
You'd be the first.
But it's Maya, Maya at talenthouse.com, or Maya Bogle, Bogle. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, and you can find me most places. But I'm passionate about what I do, and we ultimately want to support more creators in having their work seen, loved, and financially rewarded. And we'd like to make better inroads for brands to cut through in a proper way. And also, I really believe if brands do good, people buy into brands that are doing good more. And at the heart of what we do, there is something very beautiful. It's a brand supporting a creative, and a creative helping build a brand.
Thank you so much, Maya. That's been absolutely perfect.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.